Welcome to Historically Speaking. I'm your host, Michael Dwyer, and I'm here in the studio with Jim Boughton, and we are going to be bringing you monuments, stones, and stories. This is a sequel to the episode that we did last month with Tom Giffen and I, and the videoing that Jim did. And as a result of that experience, as I was talking with Jim, there were so many monuments and stones that were worthy of conversation. So I gave carte blanche to Jim, and he was gracious enough to go back to the cemetery and take pictures of monuments and stones that interested him. So let's start with this one. Why did you pick this Wheeler? And I'll tell you what it is in a moment. What would you call this?
I would call this a mausoleum.
No, it's not a mausoleum, because a mausoleum would be freestanding on four sides.
Okay, so then I don't know what you would call it.
It is actually called and this is what I should have written down, because it's called a tumulus, a T-U-M-U-L-U-S, and a tumulus is something to evoke an ancient burial mound. So here, with this Wheeler tomb, and we've got pictures of what you took inside peering through the door, it is built to evoke something in the spirit of ancient burial mounds. And I think that when people don't realize that this is a tumulus, they think, oh, it might be Wheeler Cemetery storage, and it's not. And because you peered inside, we can see that what we see here are four burials that are within this. So here you notice we've got some urns, we've got some plant stands and other things. So I emailed Tom Giffen and I said, is this turned into cemetery storage or what? And he said no, that this is simply things that probably the family had to adorn the outside of it. So with a tumulus like this and these beautiful relief burial marking where the coffins slide in, what do you think this family did for a living?
I have absolutely no idea.
Well, the older burials are the ones that you see below. So you have Ella Shaw Wheeler, who died in 1899, and then you have a very unusual name that I've never seen before. It's Janes Bailey Wheeler, Janes, Jaynes. So what really drew me into this is, what kind of income did this person have to have his own burial mound that we see here? And I found out that this man, who was born in Vermont, went to Albany Law School, made money in Wisconsin, but came back and he was in the fertilizer business.
Wow.
So that was the source of the wealth here, Wheeler Fertilizers, and eventually it was sold after his death. And when you think of how much more farming we had within the state, you can see that his fertilizers were made from blood, bone, and meat. And interestingly, when I searched the Rutland Herald for information about this, there was even back then an environmental concern about what they were dumping into streams and waterways. So this is, we call this one the Sheldon Fort. It looks like a fort. And this is also very characteristic of a tumulus, but with the arms reaching out. It's very reminiscent of a fortification. And this is the Sheldon family tumulus tomb. Here we can see Charles Sheldon. Now, what do you think he did for a living?
I have no idea, but this one really has stood out to me for many, many years. It just really commands your attention.
It does, and I'm glad you could take these interior pictures. Well, Charles Sheldon owned the Sheldon Marble Company.
Wow.
That makes sense, doesn't it? So you can see this is marble in the interior here. And in the 1870 census, which gave information about the value of someone's real estate, When people had $600, $1,000, he had $25,000.
Wow.
So what we've seen with both the Wheeler tumulus and this one, this is a lasting monument to the wealth and the prestige of families like this.
You can get that sense when you're there, how large it is, and just the type of marble. It's absolutely beautiful.
It is, and of course, because this is interior, even though we had many marble quarries in the area, marble does not hold up well with acid rain. So this is still pretty clear because it is in the interior of the monument. And here is a picture of Charles Sheldon. The Meads, very prominent family. So what would you call this?
I don't know. I don't know, but it stood out to me. Obviously, I know the Mead name, but this monument is just so beautiful. With the columns and then with the family all around. It's just, it just really caught my attention.
Yeah, it really is reminiscent of a Greek temple.
Right, yes.
And,
yeah.
you know, it has all of those elements. They look like Ionic columns, massive decoration. So this is a true monument. This is like something you would expect to see in Arlington National Cemetery.
Right, right.
And one of the close-ups of this that you took is the Latin here, which says ad ortum solis, which loosely translate, this means from sunrise to sunset.
Okay.
So it's in the journey of
And that
life.
was on the back of that monument.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you brought to life here are these very interesting stones that are in front of these, and we call these pillow stones. Right. So they look very much, and you look at all the information that's on here. So we have John Abner Mead, and it tells us that he was a private in the Company 12 of the 12th Vermont Regiment, et cetera, et cetera. A lot to read on here. So again, it's with other things here. We have Mary Adelia Sherman, wife of John Mead, another one of the pillow stones, gives information on that she was the daughter of William Northrop and Mary Bliss Sherman. Now, I looked up a little bit about the Blisses, and I have Blisses in my family.
Wow.
And my Bliss ancestor is named Freelove Bliss. It sounds like she was in a hippie colony.
His name was
but
Freelove.
it was Freelove is one of the names in the King James Bible. So this Mary Bliss Sherman, her roots go back to Rhode Island, same as my family. Wow. So now I can actually claim remote kinship with somebody buried in Evergreen Cemetery. Another one coming down a generation, John Abner Mead Hinsman. And again, what we have here with the organization of this monument, you have the pillow stones that surround the actual temple monument that we can see here. Now this is just absolutely breathtaking, I think. And this is the Moline family plot with this statue. And statues, female representations in Protestant cemeteries, you really have to think of who they are. If we were in a Catholic cemetery, you'd think, well, this might be a representation of a saint. Right. But what do you think this maiden represents?
I wouldn't know.
Well, she's very pensive, but she is carrying in her left hand a laurel. And this is a representation of victory over death. So it's very much something that, in an allegorical representation of death, she's kind of leading the way, because even though the person is deceased, it's on the path to eternal life.
And that's what drew me into this. I've seen this monument so many times going into that cemetery, and that statue just stands right out with the, would that be a mausoleum right behind her?
No, because you did an up close of this, and this is the Moline monument. and you've got I believe that's a rose right there. And surprisingly with this, and it's very much open like the book of life. And I did some research on the Molines, and first of all, I had to research the correct pronunciation of their name because we would think M-E-L-E-N is Mellon. And Hugo Moline was born in Norway and came to the United States with his parents when he was quite young. And by the 1940s, he was in the monument business. So whereas we've seen with the Meads and the Sheldons and the Wheelers, this represents 19th century industry. Here, we still have into the 20th century a man who did this for a living in the manufacture of monuments, and this is his showing off the type of monuments. So the statue, which is very classical looking, is 20th century. And I believe what's coming next, there are other members of the family, very dignified stone here of the son David Reed Moline. And I would say if he has a U.S. veteran, he's too young to have fought in World War II. So I suspect if we were to track his service, he would have fought in the Korean War. And again, another member of the family, Beverly Moline Kuzik.
You know, this monument stood out to me because you have the statue in the front, that woman's statue in the front. What would that be called? It's not a mausoleum, but there's two.
It's just I would say it's a stone reminiscent of tablets like the Ten Commandments or a Book of Life. So simply.
And then the family's behind that.
Right.
It's almost like she's marching them.
Yes, exactly.
Forward.
Yeah, and that's where you have to, if we were to go back here to this, you could see that this is a whole organization of space. So you have the statue, you have the stone, and then the individual. So again, it's not only the size of the monuments, but it's the space that it takes up because you know, having you and I both dealt recently with deaths in our family, and you're talking about plots or where they're in. Here, this is like your own little half acre.
It is, yeah.
Now, George White, and again, similar representation here of a maiden with a garland. And here you have a very carefully walled off area for this space. And when you think about it, when people were the first generation of mourners here, it would not be uncommon for people on a Saturday or Sunday to go and sit and meditate
spend time there.
In the cemetery. So this is another commanding monument here. And once again, what begs the question for me is, what did George White do for a living? He was He was in the granite industry.
That's where all the money was.
That's where the money.
Wood and marble and stone.
Yeah. And this is where obviously his father had died earlier, and you can see that this is the father here. And a lot of times when people would, the father was not the one who made the money, it was the son. But if the parents were already interred there, or they might have been reinterred, because sometimes what happened, and this is what we've seen in the old Catholic cemetery on West Street, when it was clear that there was no longer room there, they encouraged people that had relatives to move them to Calvary Cemetery, but there were people that had no family left, and that's why we still have those graves on West Street. And again, here we have the information on George White, who is the one undoubtedly who put up the monument, and you can see he lived until 1898. And again, you were drawn into the fact that 2 children died here. And Nora was just not quite 5 years old, and I love this inscription. If love and tears could Nora saved, she never would have found an early grave. And of course, I wanted to figure out what did these children die from. And Nora had hydrocephalitis. And Frankie, who was just a little baby, he was just over a year old, he died of cholera from contaminated water. And what struck me about that as a cause of death is that cholera cut across all social classes. And in the 1860s, I don't think people fully understood how cholera was transmitted. But obviously, and you notice here under Frankie, it says bye.
Right, yep.
Interesting spelling of that.
Yeah.
Myers. And this is you know this. What's this called?
That's a monument.
It is, but we can be a little more specific. It's a sarcophagus.
Okay.
So a sarcophagus would be an oblong-shaped tomb, walk all around it.
Around it, yeah.
And we call it a sarcophagus because it comes from the Greek, interesting word story here, sarx and phagos, which means flesh eating. And what they did in Greece, because these were often made of limestone, they would put the body in the sarcophagus, put the lid on, and with the heat of grease, it would aid in the process of decomposition. So literally, this, we weren't worried about the decomposing in the Myers monument here, but that's the origin of the word, flesh eating. And I wanted to know what the Myers did for a living. Here we have one of the stones that goes with this, and this is, I think it's John Myers, died in 1899. Very, very interesting story here. This man died in Brooklyn. His body was brought back to Rutland, and he was a pharmacist and made medicines. And the Myers family is part of what became the Bristol Myers Pharmaceutical Company.
Wow.
And I can remember, I don't think you can find it anymore, Ipana toothpaste is one thing. And then as pharmaceutical companies changed hands, this became the Squibb Company. So again, you think of what we have. We have granite, we have marble, we have fertilizer, and now we have pharmaceuticals.
Yep. And this monument was just stood out because of where it is in the cemetery. It's in a place all by itself. It's really a beautiful spot.
Yeah, and they're lucky that the trees weren't closer because, as we discussed last month with Tom Giffen, trees in close proximity to burial sites the roots can disrupt the stones. But a very simple, very majestic sarcophagus that we can see here. This one was certainly eye-catching. So what drew you to this one?
So this one, I'm going through the cemetery, and this one really stood out. The shape of the stone stood out. The placement of it, it's kind of, you can see stones behind, but it's all alone next to this big rock. But obviously these symbols on the front really caught my eye. And the closer I looked, I could see that this was a 32nd Mason.
32nd degree,
Yeah.
Sad story behind this one. So Charles Clark had no children. He married just 8 years before his death, so he was in his 50s when he married a woman about 25 years younger than he. Obviously was in the Civil War. You can see that he was in the 7th Vermont Regiment throughout the Civil War. He committed suicide. And his first attempt, he tried to gas himself, putting his head in the oven, and then he strode into the Otter Creek. And the newspapers at the time were very dignified about it. He had been suffering from kidney failure, obviously despondent about not getting better. And his wife kind of disappears from history, but up until the time of his marriage, this man, and he didn't have any extraordinary business experience, but he lived with his brother. And this is a very loving tribute to someone honoring his Civil War service and the 6 Masonic distinctions that he earned.
Right, and I think to become a 32nd degree Mason is not that common, right?
Right, I think, I don't know enough about this, but I think that's the apogee. You kind of go through all of that.
And is it, in some cemeteries you wouldn't be able to be buried in certain cemeteries if you've committed suicide? Is that?
Well, that was specifically a Catholic thing, and you wouldn't find Masons in Catholic cemeteries.
Right, true.
That was another thing that was prohibited. But certainly here, the veterans, probably the Sons of Union veterans who were active in this area, they put the marker next to him. So again, a small stone, it's not a monument, it is a stone, but it still tells a very, very interesting story. Now the Nichols here, this is, I would call this a plinth because there's a monument above it, and James T. Nichols, Pater Familias, father of the family. And this is the first, this is a multi-generation lot. And so the question that I always have with these things, I think we've got another one here. We'll talk about this in a minute. But Mr. Nichols made his money in real estate. And he moved to Chicago, made more money there in real estate speculation, and returned to Vermont. And what someone has done here, and I suspect once again that this is the Sons of Union veterans who put this little memorial here, that they do a great job along with members of our VFW that go and they honor the grave. So that's what we have here. And this is a daughter in the Nichols family, Caroline May, typical of kids who died of illnesses today that we could probably take care of with antibiotics. And the Edsons. Now this is very, very interesting because you have the inverted square. So you have the parents in the, I don't know quite what to call this, you know.
I don't
it's a
either.
geometric shape.
But that's what drew me into this, this stone.
Yeah, the Edsons were grocers. So this is not a mom and pop variety store. So they made some good money. And I think that in choosing this type of stone, they are looking for something innovative. And that represents, again, this is something that we mentioned last time, that you think of the industries connected with cemetery stones, and it's a whole, we have very few monument places left in the area compared to what people once did. And you know, we know that the American way of death and mourning has changed a great deal, and we've got this stone right here. James Albert Edson and his wife Hannah Hopkins. And I think it's interesting that we have the full dates of people, maiden names. And the cool thing that I found out about this man, he moved to Vermont and he was born in Fall River, Massachusetts, my hometown.
Oh, right,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
So as we've gone through this, certainly a learning experience for me, really to zoom in on the different types of stone, what they represented. I learned that cool new vocabulary word, tumulus. How often am I going to use that?
Tumulus.
But just the same.
Right.
We're not just going to say a hill tomb. We'll know it by its proper name. But I think the fact that we are having this conversation about monuments and stories now has to be something that is comforting to people who invested a great deal of money in preserving these stories. And this is all part of, I think, the heroic efforts that people are making to preserve this cemetery and all the stones that are there. And you know, there's more to this at times than just the stones that command our attention. And there's so much history here that we can learn from all of this.
There's a tremendous amount of history right in Evergreen Cemetery, and it's, you know, you gave me the task to go through and take some pictures, and it was a real pleasure to walk through and to really look at it in a different way, to look at the monuments and just the, you know, the effort that it took on some of these families to put something together like that.
And it's very much a representation, as we said earlier, of how cemeteries transformed, because none of the symbols that we have seen here are morbid. We don't have any, we have some very sentimental verses on stones, but you know, we don't have these very morbid things like you would see in old cemeteries, et cetera. And I think that in making cemeteries park-like, it invites people to go in. And when you think of the two statues that we talked about, there's a sense within the cemetery that the effort that these people made to honor the memory of their ancestors is that their stories would live on.
Their stories would live on as we're talking about them right now.
Right, yeah. So it's been, I thank you for all the effort that you put into this. So since we have a little bit of time here, if you had to pick just one, what do you think in these is probably one of your favorites?
You know, that's a hard question, because obviously the Sheldon mausoleum, or what is a tomb? That's a tumulus.
Yeah.
Okay, that one really stands out. I mean, it just really commands your attention for how large it is, and like you said, it has those wings that come out. So that one really stood out to me.
Yeah.
But I also love the sculptures. The Moline family plot really kind of speaks to me as well.
And this one, you know, I've driven by this many times. I've walked by it, and until you really know what it is, you think this is cold storage, or this is where they put the bodies until.
And you know, when I was there taking these pictures and walking around this, I just had this thought of you know, the late 1800s when they finished this and they were at a funeral. The amount of people that must have surrounded this and been there, just to kind of imagine that scene, must have been amazing.
Yeah, and the statuary, and again, we'll go back to that for a moment here. The statuary is really a remarkable evolution in how, you know, because this is a Protestant cemetery, and a major tenet of Protestantism is that you don't have the statues of saints, etc. And yet, this harkens back to something that is Greco-Roman, to see this personification of mourning. And I think it's beautiful, with her head held very pensively. So as I have driven by this many times, and when we were doing our video tour, I would have thought that this came from the late 19th century. I would not have thought that this was something that was in the middle of the 20th century. So thank you so much, Jim. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it, and we'll see what's in store next for us.
Thank you so much, Michael.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.